you're not nervous and you're going into a football game, you're not a football player. That's what I always say to these guys. Everyone's going to be a little nervous, but once you get that first hit in, it's all excitement at that point.
We came into this game most prepared I've ever been for a football game in my life. I mean, I played JV last year. Things are not going to be perfect your first time out here, but I mean, overall, like I'm happy with my team. I'm happy with the effort we brought today, and we just got to keep chugging along throughout the season. But
we literally went to the field every single day after school. Ran routes, one-on-ones with Mike Smith and Mazza, and that's what we mostly did in the offseason.
I'll be honest with you, you don't know because it's a new team. We're relatively young. I would have never predicted this. I'm glad we came out and did it. It's the first game. To come out like that, certainly that's a good way to start the season.
Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the Meat Grinder, your weekly dose of high school football in Connecticut. And I'm your host, Sean Patrick Bowley. With me, as always, is Peter Paguaga. Pete, how are you?
Good. A little sunburn for September, which was kind of weird. Like Saturday, I did not think I needed to bring sunscreen, but I did. So I'm battling a case of sunscreen. It's sunburn. It's like it's April again. It's like it's spring sports.
Anything is better than rain. Not to jinx it, but anything is better than wet, miserable, cold. I'm anything but that. I'll take a little sunburn. I got a little bit this week myself. Didn't cover all my spots, especially when I went up to Ansonia at G&H up at on Saturday afternoon. But it's anything's better than rain, so I'll take it. And it was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful start to the high school football season. A few great nights to kick off, and away we go. And at the top of the show, you heard some of the scenes from the big games this week. New Canaan just number one to start the season, just whooping up on number 6 Maloney at Falcon Field in a fascinating statement game for the Rams, who, as we went on about last week, we did not vote number one in our top 10, but plenty of, well, I don't want to say plenty did. There's only had 3 first place votes, but enough voters liked the Rams, and the Rams with a big statement early. And then, of course, you had the scene at the Ken Strong Stadium in West Haven, where Greenwich getting a little revenge on the Westies in a rematch of both rematches of last year's semifinals. West Haven, Greenwich in double L, and New Canaan, Maloney in L. And what can you say? It just overall, Pete, you're just glad to be out there, I'm sure. I mean, what did you think of the first weekend full of games?
Yeah, I mean, definitely glad to be out there, but I will say I was kind of impressed with, at least at my games, the lack of penalties. Yeah. I know Maloney took a lot late in the game on Friday, but it was pretty clean at the beginning. At least I thought so. And then Saturday, Newtown Stanford, clean for most of it, a little second half, maybe a little sloppy. But in other years, it just seems like these teams come out with a lot of penalties, point of emphasis from the referees. The games just went smooth. They weren't long, which I think is different than past years, at least, the games that I've gone to.
I don't think Richie Boucher would agree with you. West Haven had a ton of penalties in their game against Greenwich.
Well, they had a ton of penalties last year, even in the middle of the year when they were winning every game.
But the one thing I did not see a lot of was cramps. It was hot, but it wasn't overly hot. It was a beautiful week. And
there's an upsell. Banana sales are through the roof, apparently.
Before we get started, I just want to thank the New Haven Gridiron Club. On Thursday, I missed the first night of games because they inducted me into their Hall of Fame, with alongside the greats like Walter Camp, Ken Strong, and Albie Booth and Levi Jackson. And I when I got up there to accept the award, which was just great, nice job by Mike DeVito from Amity and Mr. Santillo. Just a great night overall. And I just said it was like George Costanza, when he started working for the Yankees. It's like all these guys, Ruth, Mantle, DiMaggio, Costanza. So it was just a really nice night. Lots of great guys there. We had a Scott Burrell sighting, but a lot of great inductees, and Rusty Dunn being one of them, and a few others. Nice to see all the guys there. Even Tommy DeMoro from West Haven didn't even know I was getting inducted. So he was fun to talk to. So just an overall great night. So I really appreciate it, and that was a lot of fun. But as we get to Friday night's games, Pete, let's start off with yours. Well, look, this was the big one going into the year, and everyone's kind of anticipating. Would Maloney, Pete, be able to finally snap this New Canaan curse? A couple of close games in the final 2 years ago, and then last year in the semifinals, all decided by field goals. This time, though, not so much at Falcon Field.
No, it was dominant from kickoff on. I mean, New Canaan, like I said on the show the last couple of years, like, someone's going to beat them, right? Like, someone has to be able to slow them down. Well, it might not be this year. I mean, New Canaan was ready to go from the jump. And just straight up domination on the defensive side of the ball. They really, Jesus Martell scored a touchdown, had a couple of big catches on certain drives, but he was really a non-factor in the game, and that was a big credit to the DBs at New Canaan. Michael Smith had 2 interceptions. Mazza played amazing. The defense was ready to go, which they've always been when they play Maloney. Now, flip side, the offense. Let me tell you this. New Canaan's offense hasn't looked this good in years. Luke Robinson is the real deal, and I talked about him on this show earlier, and I feel like a lot of people weren't really talking about him. He's phenomenal. I mean, he just was so poised. I think 3 of the 5 touchdowns, he was out of the pocket, he was moving, throwing on the run, and his boy, Andrew Esposito. I said, that Alex Benevento was not going to be playing there on Friday because he was going to be at Brown. Well, they're good because they got Andrew Esposito, and he can ball. 5 touchdown receptions, second all-time in state history, tied, which I guess is also a school record. Everyone was talking about that for New Canaan. But, I mean, he got open. Look, Maloney is a very athletic team, and he got around them. He got by them. I mean, there were breakdowns. I mean, it was a dominant. Look, there was a running clock in the fourth quarter of this game. I don't think anyone expected that. It was pure and utter domination, and I think Maloney's going to have to go back to the drawing board. They're going to have to figure out what went wrong because they will see them again eventually in the playoffs because I don't think this is it for Maloney. But I will say this, Maloney, maybe we retire those black jerseys. I don't think they did what you thought that they were going to do. Pure domination by New Canaan in this one.
New Canaan, they're just a college football program, basically. Everyone I saw this weekend was just like, my goodness, how do you just be good like that every single year? We did a story about how coaches have to maintain these programs every single year. And just maybe it's resources, maybe it's the buy-in from everybody in the community and all the coaches in the school. But Lou Marinelli, they have not been to a state playoff since 2004, which is just insanity. It's an amazing job at what they did. Moving over to the second big game of Friday night, a gorgeous late summer sunset hanging over Ken Strong Stadium in West Haven, where it was the dawn of the new high school football season and a rematch of last year's Class XL semifinal between Greenwich and West Haven, won by the Westies. The Westies had a 3-1 lead in this series going back to their 2002 state championship victory, the last of 4 won by the late great Ed McCarthy, who died in March. And his presence lingered over this game. They had a nice little moment of silence before getting to work. He was noticeably absent. That spot in the end zone where he usually sits, nobody was there this time. It was just a heavy feeling lingering over the field. We knew a lot about the Westfield. We had their all-state quarterback, Nick Conlon, big offensive line, the return of huge lineman Kadir Dembele. But what about Greenwich? Sure, only 2 starters back, including 2-time All-Stater Pete Bombalakis, but who would be the next generation of stars, and were they going to be ready for prime time? Well, we found out early. First quarter, Greenwich with a great field position to start, and the 5th play from scrimmage, new quarterback MJ D'Angelo finds Mike O'Donnell wide open in the center of the end zone. Nice ball, nice catch, Greenwich up 7-0. West Haven anxious to respond, but Greenwich mixing things up with a little pooch kick, fumbled by 2 Westies, kicked around a little bit, and finally recovered by Jack Kelly, number 2 in your program, who you'll be hearing a lot about later. Greenwich in business again in West Haven territory. 4 plays later, D'Angelo takes it in himself through a gaping tunnel in the West Haven defenses and scores his first varsity touchdown. What a relief. Cardinals up 14-0. Game settled down a bit after that, and West Haven had plenty of chances to answer, but as you warned in the preseason, Pete, just couldn't make the big play, and a number of misconnections between Conlon and the receivers. One down the sideline could have been a touchdown. Another one over the middle could have been a touchdown. You'll see another big one later. But Greenwich's defense, smelling a little blood, just pinned its ears back and swarmed over the Westies' ground game. Kelly, among many of their stars, was all over the field in this one. Conlon often found himself scrambling around for his life. West Haven did get a break on a muff punt in the second quarter, and Conlon was able to take it to the 25 with a nice scramble down the right sideline. But on 4th and 1, a huge penalty, and there were a lot of them for West Haven, 10 total, pushed the Westies back. Greenwich held and goes into halftime 14-0. That's break. Second half, Greenwich takes the opening kickoff and goes on a nearly 10-minute drive, North Haven-esque, that culminated in a field goal by Julian Ravina, putting them up 3 scores, 17-0. And in a play that just about summarizes West Haven's whole night, Conlon busts loose on a long run over the left side. It looks like a sure TD. He's got a block, but as he's trying to cut back, he trips over himself and downs himself at the 35. Even with great field position, on 4th down, Conlon finds Tamaine Thompson wide open in the end zone, and he just can't make the play. That was pretty much that. Greenwich tacked on a 16-yard touchdown run by Hector Lopez, and the West Haven averted the shutout with a Corian Harris touchdown, 54 yards from Conlon. It was too little, too late. That was it. Cardinals not flying under the radar anymore. Statement victory 24-6. Was it revenge? Kind of. Whole different team, though, and definitely a nice way to start the season, at least. Here's your boy, Pete Von Velakis.
You know, I'm really proud of these guys. They're all, you know, a lot of our guys are inexperienced, but you know what? That doesn't really matter. When you work as hard as you could, you know, and you have enough enthusiasm and effort, magical can happen. I don't want to say revenge, but I feel like we got a little bit of revenge. But our guys worked really hard, and we knew what goal we wanted. We won. It's not fun being 0-1. We wanted to go out 1-0, and that's exactly what we did.
We came into this game most prepared I've ever been for a football game in my life. I mean, I played JV last year. These coaches got me ready. I've had to just go out and execute. I mean, things are not going to be perfect your first time out here, but I mean, overall, like I'm happy with my team. I'm happy with the effort we brought today, and you know, we just got to keep chugging along throughout the season.
Just a big emphasis on team all off season. You know, we're going to have a lot of big name guys. We weren't expecting to see a bunch of guys in the top 50. To be perfectly honest, I was hoping that we could sort of skeet under the radar in our scrimmages and you know, come out and surprise people week 1.
And you'll also hear a little bit from MJ D'Angelo, who was a JV starter last year. All of his teammates, he has trust in his coaches. He was the most prepared he'd ever been for in a game. He patiently waited his turn, had a really nice debut, running for 127 yards and a touchdown, and threw a touchdown pass. You also heard at the end there from Tony Morello, head coach, trying to keep things under wraps, and did a very good job of it. A lot of the guys in the FCIAC did a very good job keeping things under wraps this week. Not show any cards, so to speak, but he was really happy after a nice win. It looks like Greenwich does what it all does best, Pete, and that's reloads.
Yeah, I you know, Greenwich trying to keep it under the radar is like one of the most laugh out loud funny things I heard this entire preseason. And I texted Coach Morello after the game. I said, so much for keeping it under the radar. But when you're Greenwich or New Canaan or Darien or Staples, you know, people are expecting this from you. They write you in their top 10 every year because they expect you to play at a high level. And that's a lot of pressure. You know, yes, we did talk about how Greenwich only had a couple of starters back, but you know what? Those new guys went out and they played really well. And yeah, they quieted those concerns very quickly, but you still have to go out and do it. So I saw a couple of the Greenwich guys on Saturday, had a little chat, had a little fun with them at halftime of the Stanford Newtown game. But they look ready to go. And our guy, Pete, man, we've been talking about him on the show for 3 years. And now he's like, he was a leader last year, but like this is his team now. And they're going to go, you know, with him leading the way. And it's still Greenwich, man. You still got to watch out.
He at halftime, he walks by me on the sidelines and he's like, hey, Sean, did you get my tackle? Your tackle? Yeah, sure. Somewhere in there. I still couldn't find it. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it wasn't as good as a highlight as he thought it was. But listen, a great job by all of them. They really swarmed over West Haven. Remember, Kelly, man, Jack Kelly was just a beast out there, running around, making plays, hard hits, even on special teams with a fumble recovery. Just a ridiculous game there. Listen, Greenwich still got some work to do. Obviously, they all have some work to do. West Haven, had their chances. Maybe it's just a matter of getting Conlon and the new receivers up to game speed here. But as you said, Pete, man, lots of mistakes. I mean, Kadir was great. Oh, he was tremendous. But, you need more than that to win a game. They're going to need their playmakers to step up, huh?
Yeah, and look, that's any team. There are other teams that we talked about who were replacing playmakers as well. And, West Haven's going to be fine. You have a quarterback like Conley. He's going to work with these guys. He's going to get them up to speed. We learned last year that you can lose your opening game all you want. And 4 out of the 6 did, and they won state championships. So, it's not over. West Haven's just going to have to come up to speed a little quicker because, we'll talk about next week's schedule, but they're going to have a team that really is looking for a win as well next week. So, Nick, get out there with your guys and get them up to speed now because Friday is going to be a tough one.
Yeah, absolutely. Versus Shelton, which if you already know what happened there, that Sunday night game is kind of falling off a little bit. Pete, it was a big week. I mean, obviously the Alliance was the dominating thing in the week. All the top games, all the big matchups, that Al and his gang put together. I mean, this is always a great start to the season. I enjoy this. It was a great night of football in the Alliance. Let's take a look at the overall scoreboard here, and then we'll jump into the top 10. Starting things off, the best league of the Alliance, the best week was the CCC, despite Maloney's loss, going 8-3. I mean, there's lots of games in there that they did pretty well in, followed by the SWC, which always seems to do well in their matchups. FCIAC won the big games, like New Canaan, Greenwich, obviously, St. Joe, which we'll get to. They went 9-7 overall, so a mixed bag, but they obviously won the headliner games. SCC, not great overall, and one of those games was over the CTC, 6-11. It's kind of an iffy showing by Al Carbon's league there. The ECC 5-7. That's usually better than they do. It's probably though a lot worse. The scores there and those losses were pretty lopsided. And then the CTC, of course, going 1-5. The big win, their only win being the team that's barely a CTC team as it is. That's Northwest United being Stratford 21-20, which we'll get to that in a second. So a lot of those games involve top 10 teams. So speaking of the top 10, let's take a look at the week one. Now we've got the preseason out of the way. We don't even have to, we didn't know a lot about the teams in the preseason, so it kind of reflected that in the top 10. Now with a bunch of games under our belt, let's take a look at the top 10, the latest GameTimeCT top 10 poll. Starting at number 10 is Masuk, which signaled the triumphant return of Steve Christy to the coaching sideline, but it was a dogfight, 33-26 over Windham in a rematch of last year's Class L final. Sophomore Aaron Champagne threw 3 touchdown passes, 2 to Shane Walker, and Max Viglione caught the other and also ran for an 83-yard score. But like we said, no picnic as Wilton rallied back several times and was within a score late before Masuk held them off. Here's Christy, who hasn't been on the sideline since 2022 on his triumphant return. All giving credit to all the guys who helped him and supported him over the last year.
It's amazing. You see, this is the magic. This is for all the Masuk Nation, for the coaches who aren't with us right now, for G, for Halifin. It's for all those guys, for everything we do and everything we do together, and the way they handle stuff and the way they handle adversity. It's a true lesson to these kids how they handle adversity.
Masuk is Friday at Enfield. Wilton will try to get off the snide at Norwalk. Number 9 is St. Joseph. Went up to the Vanacore Field unranked to face two-time defending Class MM champion and preseason number 6 North Haven in a possible preview of things to come in Class M now that North Haven has dropped down there with Hand and the Hogs. And it was a dogfight, 7-7 in the second half, but quarterback H.T. Jones, 2 nice strikes. The first, an 83-yarder to Jake Rios, and then a go-ahead score, 46 yards to T.J. Wright in the third quarter to put them ahead for good. A field goal by Rios later on gave them the 17-7 victory. A big one for the Hogs. And here's Wright.
How big of a deal holding this team to 7 points and shutting them out in the second half?
That's a big deal. Shout out to Coach Stanko.
He came here. He told us he had a great game plan for us, and we respect him, and we came out and fought for him.
He gives a shout out there to Coach Justin Stanko, the former DC at Shelton, who's now helping the Hogs out as his kids go to St. Joseph. He coached the defense, held North Haven just to a 79-yard run by Joey Mastriani in the second quarter. Hogs now 1-0, go to West Hill. North Haven plays host to number 1 Hamden. Number 8 is Maloney, which still gets a lot of love from some of the voters after its 42-13 loss to number 1 New Canaan. Quick turnaround as they face 1-0 Glastonbury on Thursday. Number 7 is Fairfield Prep, which, man, Pete, talk about your statement games in week 1. The last couple of seasons, they got well behind the 8-ball Fairfield Prep, including 0-6 last year. And although they did still make the playoffs. This time, man, the offense, which struggled last year, came out trucking. Finbar Malloy, ya boy, with a huge game, catching 3 touchdown passes and looking great doing them from new quarterback Robert Manning as the Jesuits blasted Southington in new coach Ron Levesque's debut, 38-8. Goodness gracious, he looked like he was having some fun out there, Pete.
Yeah, this is the Fairfield Prep team that we expected to see this year, and they have, I don't want to spoil too far ahead, but they have a big matchup on Friday where they can come out and really put the state on notice.
The Jesuits next face number 6, dun dun dun, Daniel Hand Madison at the Surf Club. The Tigers took their time, but ultimately powered past New London 36-14. Tyler Norachi ran for a couple of scores. Paul Candrelli now at quarterback threw a pair of TDs to Quinton O'Day and added a crazy 37-yard touchdown score. Swooping and dodging over a few whalers, Hand scored 28 points in the final 6 minutes of the first half to go up 36-0. That was about that. Now the rematch for Prep at the Surf Club. A wild, 35-34 victory you attended last year? That was one on a controversial 2-point conversion stop at the end. But, Pete, what can you say about that matchup? Goodness.
This was it. This is the best matchup in week 2. If you're a football fan, you're going to this game. These are 2 different teams than last year. Prep coming off a win. Mike Fornabayo said it. Fairfield Prep's 1-0. Is that allowed or is that against the rules? So now we're going to see a Prep team coming off a win going into Hand, and I think they're going to be riding high, and I think they have every right to be riding high. And if I was Hand, a little bit too slow of a start against New London. That's a team that Daniel Hand should be ripping through early, and they kind of took them a little bit of time to go in, but they ended up pulling away. So I think Friday night's going to be a real doozy. I'll be there.
You're getting all the good games early, huh? Oh,
yeah.
Good matches. Yeah, well, you were there last year. You were there last year, and stands the reason you're there for the rematch.
The only reason I was there last year, just quickly, it was a Saturday night game. We had no one on. We all expected Prep to blow out Hand because Hand had lost to Bunnell. So I go to the game, and I remember texting our editor, I'm just going to get some photos and some video clips, but I'm going to bail if this is a blowout because why am I, whatever. And the game went to overtime. So I had to write a story, shoot more photos, and do a highlight tape.
That game said that was the last time, that was the beginning of Hand's win streak, which dated back to them again. They haven't lost a game since week 1 of last year to Bunnell. A big, I'm sure Fairfield Prep licking its chops in that one, but it's at the Surf Club. Be there, be square, man. No better place, by the way, if you're new to Connecticut high school football, to watch a football game here. A gorgeous, gorgeous place. I envy you, but we'll see where I end up. Hopefully it'll be somewhere just as good. Usually when this happens, Pete goes to if we get the game, and that game ended up being the bad one, and then the one the other guy went to ends up being the great one. Case in point, 2019. I mean, granted, my game was very good in that. It was a Hand at St. Joseph, number 1 versus number 2. Very good game. But it wasn't the Newtown game over at Trumbull High School versus Darien on the anniversary of Sandy Hook for the state championship. It won on a walk-off, which, God, I can't believe it's been 5 years already on that one, Pete. Oof, goodness. Let's get back to the top 10. Number 5, Windsor in a dogfight. Love those dogfights. Versus East Hartford and Draven Roberts, our guy in our top 50 players. But John Manning, here's the guy we should have maybe had there, ran for 302 yards and scored 6 touchdowns to hold off the Hornets and prove to 1-0. East Hartford's Roberts got the Hornets within a score on a 1-yard TD run with 7 seconds left in the third quarter. But Manning ran 59 yards on the next Windsor play from scrimmage. On the final play of the third quarter, it's like 7 seconds between those plays to put that game away. He had 187 yards in the third quarter alone, according to Lori Riley of the Hartford Courant. Windsor is at 0-1 Simsbury on Thursday. Number 4, Staples, the defending Class AA champs, with the easy win over Hamden, 48-7. Some people wondering why Staples got drew Hamden in the Alliance lottery there. I don't know. Maybe they're just
lottery.
wasting.
That's fun.
Yeah,
lottery. That's fun.
Yeah. Anyway, Nick Weil, in his debut at quarterback for Player of the Year, Caleb Smith with 13 for 23, 222 yards, and 5 touchdowns. 2 to Shane Andrew, 7 catches, 107 yards. And the Wreckers opened their title defense with a victory. Number 3 is Greenwich, who we talked about. They're playing Stanford at noon on Saturday. A team that gave a little bit of trouble last year, but maybe not so much in the quarterfinals. Number 2 is Darien, which managed to keep the heralded return of Charlie Tom under wraps until game time.
Charlie, I'm talking to you right now. I asked you in person when we saw you last week, and I said, Charlie, when you coming back? A mid-year, 1-2 games, whatever, and you smirked at me, and I said, you're playing week 1, aren't you? And he turned around, he said, no, I'm not. And then I come to find out on Twitter that Charlie Tom back in the lineup. I love to see that. I'm so glad he's healthy. He's one of the best players in the state. Darien's obviously a great team, but having Charlie out there is amazing. I texted Bowley. I'm like, we asked him, and he smirked. I knew it. Oh.
Yeah. He just gave you a little.
But I think Coach Grant was over my shoulder being like, don't say anything.
Don't tell him. So Darien got their season off to a flying start with Ben Rolap throwing an 82-yard TD strike to Georgia Tech bound and Kevin Roche to kickstart a 45-6 victory over Cheshire. Rolap wound up throwing for 219 yards and 4 touchdowns. He ran for another. The big star, though, of the game, I think, is Darien's defense, which was ridiculous, forcing 5 turnovers that have set up 21 Darien points. And here's Rolap. No big deal. Good start. No big deal. We got ways to go.
I was very happy with it. The second half, I think we exhaled a little bit, started some stuff to clean up there, but, our defense put us in great positions. I think we started like 3 drives inside the 30, so that's always easy.
Finally, Pete, number 1 is New Canaan, Robinson, Esposito, Benevento, who? They just off to a flying start. Let me just quickly say about quickly say about New Canaan. People were saying this team is probably going to be better than the last 2 teams that won state championships. What does that mean? Well, let's find out, I guess. So not a bad pick now that we look at it for number 1. I'm still voting Pete for Darien. But I don't know. What's going to take to change your vote? Thanksgiving?
I'm sticking with Darien, and if they both go in 9-0 on Thanksgiving, I'm still going to stick with Darien. Unless we see kind of, look, Darien had a little bit of a slow start. It was only 6-0 at one point, I think, after the first quarter against Cheshire. And you were like, and I'm like sitting there at New Canaan being like, is that video going to come back to haunt me? Which it will probably, but not right now. No, I just think these are the 2 best programs. They night in, night out, week in, week out. This is going to be the 1-2 heading into Thanksgiving unless something crazy happens, which is very possible. But I think you'll see more people start to move towards Darien as the year goes.
Not a great week coming up this week for the FCIAC. New Canaan is at Ward, which had a nice opening win over Harding in Chris Parisi's first game as head coach. And then Darien plays Friday at McMahon, which got beat up a bit by New Britain. We're going to get to that in a second. Let's take a look at these some of the big results from the Alliance Week 1. And I don't know, some of these games, Pete, any big surprise that really kind of stuck out to you?
I'll tell you this, and we're going to talk about this team on the pick show. But Pomperaug, losing to Conard, I for sure thought that Pomperaug was going to beat them and go into a 1-0 matchup against Guilford. That one really stood out to me. Also, Windham beating Notre Dame Prep. I think that was really interesting. Great for Windham. I thought Notre Dame Prep would be ready to go. And then, obviously, You look at this game that we talked about, and we regretted not being there. But Bunnell over Xavier, I think that was just a good game, but a really good, to come from behind for Bunnell. I mean, I said Bunnell is a sleeper or a team to keep an eye on. I picked them as a Final Four team on George DeMayo's show. I really like the Bulldogs this year, so coming out with a Week 1 win against Xavier is huge for them.
Brog stunned me. Connor has not been very great in the last few years, and coming out and beating them up 35-22, it was a very, very big one, I thought. Another one that kind of, you mentioned the Windham game. I picked Windham to go to the Class S final, or was it double S final, and I was feeling like, oh man, am I in big trouble or what? But Notre Dame Prep going to Class M this year. They got to play in that whole group, which makes that division crazy. But my Whippets, man, what can you say about them? That's a great job pulling off that win. That's a tough trip for Notre Dame Prep to go all the way up to Willimantic, but very good job by them. A few other ones that really kind of stepped up. Bethel getting its first win with Nick Tarantino over Boulder Havens, granted. Sheehan, John Ferrazzi with his 100th career win, 47-6 over Griswold Wheeler. Waterford with a big game over Foreign, 28-27. Nice ECC win, one of the rare big wins in a pretty good Foreign team to start. And then Brookfield, Pete, over Jonathan Law, 41-14. Michael Walters having a huge game over there in Milford, and the SWC getting off to a great start. So a good start for the Alliance overall. As we mentioned, the CCC that was a big confidence boost for the CCC, which usually just does not do very well. I think last year they were like 1-6 one night. It was just horrific. But I don't know, man. The FCIAC did very well, and the SEC did very well. So a good start overall for the
FCIAC. The FCIAC did well. The FCIAC went 6-1 against the SEC.
Yeah,
I mean, guys, what are we doing here? Look, the coverage and the SEC. SEC is going to take center stage this week because they have great games up and down, and the FCIAC just does not have a great schedule. But man, Greenwich over West Haven, West Hill over Wilbercross, Ward over Harding, Darien over Cheshire, Staples over Hampton, St. Joe's over North Haven, Notre Dame West Haven doing the SEC some love with the win over Trumbull, but that's a bad showing by the SEC.
The FCIAC, it's terrible. The SEC, for pride's sake, the SEC has been kind of playing second fiddle to the FCIAC for a long time now. Remember that 2012 season when the SEC took 3 state championships? Now, they've had some over the time, but I think the FCIAC really just outdoes them now. I mean, beginning with Darien and Duquesne, they're just like kind of the gold standard, and the SEC's just kind of play catch up. Yes, North Haven won last year, and what's that?
Yeah, well, even Greenwich too. Greenwich has 2 titles during that period. Yep. I mean, it just looks like it's as FCIAC domination in the big divisions. The double L and the L. West Haven did get to the finals, but Staples won. So, it's just been pure FCIAC domination, it seems. And I'll be honest with you. So that was the 2012 football season. So I started covering this in 2013. So maybe I'm the curse. Maybe I'm the reason why the FCIAC has become more of a dominant team.
Well, it's like, let's see. It was who won that year? It was Hand, Xavier, and Hillhouse won that year, and that was like the high watermark. I remember he had the video of Al Carbone smirking to himself at Rensselaer Field. In the beginnings, the seeds of the Alliance dancing in his head, where he could show the dominance of the SEC over the rest of the state. Well, hasn't quite worked out that way. But hey, good job by the CCC. The other game I didn't even get to mention, though, for the FCIAC, how about Ridgefield, 11-6 over Hall? I talked to our guy George up at the Ansonia game, and Ridgefield, Hall had a great chance to score early, but fumbled the ball. Ridgefield covered, kicked the field goal, and had another touchdown. They get out of there. James Reed with his first win as head coach, taking over for Kevin Callahan, and Steve Markey taking over for Frank Robinson III. Doesn't get his, but it was a really close game, 11-6. Is that a scoregami for high school football? Might have been a scoregami there, at least. I remember that's a strange score. So that is the Alliance showdown there, like we said. The FCIAC, CCC, the SWC with big thumbs up. ECC, SCC, and CTC with thumbs down at this point. There were some pretty wild results out there in week 1, not necessarily all the Alliance games. So, Pete, why don't you take us through a few of these that that really stuck out to you? Some games that were won on the final play of the game.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of kind of blowouts per se, but there were some games that really came down to the wire. And, quickly, we talked about Bunnell, but let's dive into that game. JT Chernich caught a 35-yard touchdown pass from Mendoza with 2 minutes left, right? Bunnell gets all the way within 1. And then Tide decides, I'm going for 2. Ricky Miller scores on the 2-point conversion. Bunnell goes up 22-21. They hold on, beat Xavier. That is a huge momentum boost for Bunnell heading into the season. Then Northwest United, they beat Stratford 21-20. Our guy, Reed Werner, not only catches the touchdown that ties the game with 1.5 seconds left, but then he kicks the extra point to put the Workhorses up 1 to beat Stratford. He had 2 touchdown catches in the game and an interception. And then this one, and before I preface this, make sure you listen to the coach's interview tomorrow. We're going to have Amity coach George French on because his guy, Landon Santinello, caught a touchdown pass with 1:02 left from Joseph Puglisi. Amity beat Shelton 14-7. Amity's first win over Shelton since 2005. So hats off to Puglisi, Santinello, Coach French. I mean, what a win for the Spartans. We just talked about him on this show. We were excited to see what Coach French was going to do there. And I think a win over Shelton is a really good start.
Yeah, who needs Alliance games? I mean, you have good old SEC/Housatonic League games. Being an Amity grad myself, I mean, Shelton's our white whale. We never, just like Cheshire, we never beat Shelton. So it's cause for a little celebration there on Newton Road, big time. And they went down the field to start that game and they didn't score. And I'm watching some of the Gales guys who were tweeting out the updates, and Amity went down, did not score. Shelton, first play, whoop, for a touchdown, Kinnick. So you're like, oh, here we go, And then as you kept watching, you just kept seeing that Amity was still hanging around. Tied the score at 7-7, and it's tied late, which is a great defensive job by George French's guys. But George French, he must have done some, Tony Sagnella, trickery there, or not, just grind out, eat the clock down, and do the best you can when you have the ball. Amity with a big win. That's really that's big time for a Derby guy. By the way, George French is a Derby guy who played there and then was coach at Derby. Couldn't beat Shelton in a million years. So good job by George. Be sure to catch that. That'll be fun to talk to him about tomorrow. But yeah, those are a few big games, Pete. Let's now we're kind of in that vein. Let's just hit our shout outs, man. There are a lot of guys who had a lot of big games this week and lots of things to talk about. Why don't you start with yours? Who do you got for your first shout out of 2024?
My first shout out of 2024 is going to go to the first player that I saw score a touchdown this season, and I'm pretty sure it was the first touchdown scored this season up in New Haven at Hill House. It was Amir Danley. Okay, he scored 4 rushing touchdowns on just 6 carries. Of those 6 carries, he rushed for 94 yards in Hill House's dominant 49-7 win over Platt Tech. Heck of a game there, Amir.
Pete, my first shout out goes to Hayden Allard of Killingley. Soren Reef, who? 307 yards and 7 touchdowns on 18 carries in a 68-16 victory over Stonington, a team I thought was going to be pretty good. They had all their guys back, Stonington. But right now, I mean, in a non-alliance game, right now, Killingley showing it is going nowhere. Even with the graduation of a great player like Soren Reef, 2-time All-State for us, first team, and this kid Allard absolutely just showing that that Killingley is not going anywhere anytime soon. A huge eye-opening win, kind of a statement to the rest of the ECC with Killingley. Pete.
All right, next up, I got my guy, and I talked about him earlier in the show, but Andrew Esposito, the junior from New Canaan, caught 9 passes for 271 yards and 5 touchdowns. With the last one coming on a shovel pass, I'm seeing a lot more of that. Every coach thinks that they're Andy Reid, and it's very confusing to see what is a shovel pass or what is a run. But 5 receiving touchdowns for Esposito in the game. We talked about missing Alex Benevento. Andrew stepped up. He looked awesome. Second most receiving touchdowns in a game in state history. I think tied about 6 or 7 other guys, including 2 former New Canaan players. So Andrew is in the record book, and New Canaan is 1-0. Sean, who do you got?
I'm going to go with Alex Dombrowski for East Haven. Pete, East Haven hadn't beat a team not named Bassick since 2021, and they're looking to get off the schneid a little bit here for Coach Scott Benoit, who I got to talk with a bit before the game. We were at the Hall of Fame dinner, and Scott is cautiously optimistic. COVID did not do East Haven any favors. It's been hard coming back for the team. Remember, they were in the running for the playoffs for 2 straight years when Scott got there, and now they had some injuries. They had a lot of things happen, and now nice way to get back with a 21-18 victory over Lyman Hall. And a non-alliance game, another good conference game to start the year for East Haven. But Alex Dombrowski ran for 154 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he also threw for 150 yards and another touchdown, accounting for all 3 of them. Good start by the Yellow Jackets. Pete.
All right, I'm going to go with Ryan Schaafstal, quarterback, Newtown. He played against Bunnell last year. He played when the quarterback got hurt last year for Newtown, but this was his first game under center as the guy. And he threw for 3 touchdowns, and he rushed for 2 more. He is a true dual threat for the Nighthawks in their 35-13 win over Stanford. I'm going to tell you this, Ryan. He was very soft-spoken after the game, gave a lot of credit to his teammates. Very well done. But let me tell you something, Ryan. You were going to be interviewed a lot this season. You guys are going to be a really good team, or you guys are a really good team, but you're going to be interviewed a lot. So I told Jaden Taylor, his wide receiver, I was like, yo, you got to talk to Ryan a little bit. You got to pump him up. He's got that soft-spokenness, which is great, but let's get those interview answers up high, Ryan, because you are going to be interviewed a lot. Hell of an opener. Sean, who do you got?
Pete, I'm going to go back to the CCC. I'm going to give my shout-out to Kyle Melvin, who we put in our 50 players to watch with Berlin. He carried the ball 14 times, 121 yards, and scored 3 touchdowns as Berlin beat a big, bad SEC team. Like if you watch the Pick'em show, I was all over that. Come on, Bradford. And a 42-7 victory over the Hornets at Brantford, if I'm not mistaken. A big win by Berlin, kind of, sticking it to me early for making a pretty bad pick. There were a bunch of them. I must admit, but that one really kind of stuck out from the results there. Pete.
And my last one is Nick Wheel, quarterback at Staples. I said on this show last week that Staples didn't sign Caleb Smith to a contract extension, and we're voting Staples so high, and that's a lot of pressure to put on, a new cast of characters. And Nick didn't care what I had to say. Threw for 223 yards and a school record 5 touchdowns in a 48-7 win over Hampton. That 5 touchdowns ties him to 2 other players. One of those players, Caleb Smith. Sean, who's your last one?
Oh, man, I'm having a real hard time. I really should pick. I want to give Ansonia a shout-out because I went there all the way up to Gilbert Northwest Regional to see how the Chargers would start off their opening season. And there's just too many guys there. But I will say this thing about Ansonia before I get to the actual shout-out. Jake Romanowski is a character. As we didn't know that before, we know it now. In fact, after the game, I'm asking all these guys, I just asked him what do you think of the opening game? And he goes, oh, we're coming. We're coming back. I'll just let him talk. Here's his take on the 2024 season for the Chargers, who haven't won a state championship since, 2022.
Yeah, they could. Right now, we're on the revenge tour with the loss of Cromwell, loss of Naugatuck. We're coming back this year. I want another ring this year. I really want this bad. Really want it.
Think you guys got the horses?
Oh, we do. We got the energy. We got the chemistry. With Quintez running the ball, we're looking good.
After the game, Tom Brockett came up to me and goes, can I see that tape for a second? I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, let me see that tape for a second. I'm like, he goes, because I want to burn it. He goes, these guys haven't won anything yet. He won't form off. But Jacob, we got to see his brother Alex Romanowski, who's now at the Monroe Junior College. He had some concussion issues, but good to see him playing back. But I'm not going to give my shout-out to Ansonia. They had a great game up there at Gilbert Northwestern. But my shout-out's going to go to John Manning from Windsor. Just an incredible performance by them in a game. They needed every single one of his touchdowns because Draven Roberts is legit for East Hartford. Ran for 302 yards and scored 6 touchdowns in a 53-26 victory over East Hartford. An amazing job by them. I know I'm all out of shout-outs, but I got one more here I want to just mention because we did not. I feel like we should mention it. But Brady Gamby for Watertown ran for 3 touchdowns and threw for 3 more. I mean, 6 total. We knew they were going to be good. But remember, Seymour beat them last year, and they went to the state final. Was it a fluke? No, it's not a fluke. Look at this, 55-6 over Seymour. Watertown saying last year was no fluke with a big victory to start the season off. 55-6. That one blew my doors off. Wow, Pete, that's enough shout out for. We got to sit here all day and talk about all the great plays we saw. I mean, Glastonbury, Connor Finnerty did well too. Just crazy. A great opening week, Pete. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're going to throw out another shout out, I'm going to give a quick one. It's not a player, but it's. I call him Mr. Thrill. He's the PA announcer at Bridgeport Central. He kept me updated on the scores after I left. So shout out to Mr. Thrill.
Jeez. All right, man. That's going to kind of wrap it up for us here. What are we looking out for next week, Pete? I mean, there's some pretty big games out there. Not quite a Lions caliber. We got Lions week 3. We kind of go back to our corners for a little bit. And then we get to go back to our Lions games again. But where are we going?
I mean, I'm probably going to Hand. But no, this is a great SEC week. Hand and Prep. West Haven, Shelton should be a good one. Saturday, you got Greenwich, Stanford, which they played twice last year, and it was a great game in the regular season. And then, Cromwell, Portland, North Branford, I think is one of the best games on the schedule this week. I said that Pomperaug loss kind of lost a little luster, but I really like Guilford and Pomperaug too this week.
Guilford, we didn't talk about Caden Hillier when we went wild. Fitch did not listen to me from the guide. Caden Hillier had a great game, but Guilford at Pomperaug is a big one. Cromwell, Portland, North, one of those games I'll be at. But that West Haven Shelton game, man, loser's going to be in big trouble. Well, maybe not big trouble. This isn't.
If you lose that game, you call Keith Hellstern. All right, you guys aren't out of it.
Yeah, how do you do this? Again, 6 state champions. You're not, 2 losses is not a death knell, especially if you're West Haven in Class AA. They'll get in at 5-5 with that SEC with that Alliance boost. But anyway, there you go, Pete. That is the week 1 in the books. So much to talk about. If I missed something, I'm going to look back and go, man, I missed that. I can't believe I missed that. We'll have to get them next week. But so that'll wrap it up for week 1 on the Meat Grinder. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube if you're watching there, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts. It really does help. So, for Pete Paguaga, I am Sean Patrick Bowley. This has been the Meat Grinder on GameTimeCT.
Love you all.